Hello and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues, all from a Catholic perspective. I'm Catherine Hadro in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thanks for joining us.
In this week's show, Family First, a U.S. couple who spoke at the World Meeting of Families shares why strong marriages support a culture of life. Abortion-themed ice cream? Hear the latest propaganda abortion advocates are scooping out. And this.
I actually thank God that I kept him, because it was like I could be stressed out about something. I look at him and he's a happy baby. So it's just like now I thank God for me meeting Miss Linda.
One woman shares how a pro-life group convinced her to walk out of an abortion clinic and say yes to her son's life.
But now we have a first look into the highly anticipated film about the notorious abortionist Kermit Gosnell.
Philadelphia Police Department, we have a search warrant.
What is that smell? Man, you gotta see this. Is this normal?
I don't know, I've never been in an abortion clinic before.
That's part of the newly released trailer from the upcoming film Gosnell, the trial of America's biggest serial killer, starring Dean Cain. It centers around the trial of abortionist Kermit Gosnell, who in 2013 was found guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder for killing infants after failed abortion procedures. He was also found guilty of involuntary manslaughter of a patient at his facility, for performing abortions past Pennsylvania's state legal limit, and for a range of other health and safety violations. The movie on Gosnell will be released in more than 700 theaters this October 12th. I had the chance recently to speak with one of the film's actors. Here's our interview. AlfonZo Rachel portrays Detective Stark in the upcoming movie Gosnell, America's biggest serial killer. He joins us from Palm Springs, California. AlfonZo, welcome to the show.
Howdy.
Good to see you. First off, you're very open about how you yourself are very pro-life. Can you share what shaped your pro-life views?
Oh my goodness. Well, I got to thank the Lord for that, because this knucklehead wouldn't have got it on his own. Because I used to be, my views on the sanctity of life, or the whole pro-choice narrative and stuff like that. I was all for it. But it was all coming from a place of selfishness. And my wife, actually, who is pro-life, she presented it to me like this. And this is a guy who's pretty conservative. Coming into it, after seeing what liberalism is, but she dropped this one on me. There was a time when Black people, weren't considered human, and she tapped, and at the time I was a little bit more Afrocentric, and she tapped into that, and I was like, wow, wait a minute, how can I be a fair person, and how can I, be selective about such an outrage, and consider that when people that there was a time when people would say that, hey, you're not really human, I can do with your life whatever I want. It's like, wow, I got to apply this here because this person is human, and I'm trying to disqualify this person's personhood. So from there, that kind of got the ball rolling for me to say, I think we need to step up and, speak up for their lives.
That's powerful. And today you're now part of this Gosnell movie. I want to go back to 2013 when abortionist Kermit Gosnell was on trial. When that was going on and the media was barely covering it, what struck you the most? Was Gosnell on your radar back then?
Yeah. I picked up on it despite the media trying to cover it up. I picked up on it, and I was like, look, anybody who's pro-abortion, you have to understand that this is what this leads to. And you can, and y'all can try to say that, hey, you can make abortion as safe and clean and the facilities all clean as much as you want to. The bottom line is that somebody's still gonna die. It ain't gonna be safe for the kid. Okay? And when you see something like this going on, it's like you have to understand this is where this leads.
Wow. Can you give us a preview then of the movie? Can you describe your character, Detective Stark?
Stark is, as far as I know, Stark is not a real person. Anybody else in the movie is based on an actual character. Stark is in there to obviously to make the story more interesting, because like, hey, the story itself is horrifying. It's a true story and it's enough of a horror for itself. But to make it more interesting, we got to bring in this character Stark to to help with the story element of play. But to make Stark, it wasn't really a stretch because I didn't have to develop a character. I didn't really have to do any sort of contortions, to fit into this character type. It would be me, still being me, but as a police officer. So, if people even like me just a little bit, they might like the Stark character.
And you'll be right there with Dean Cain, who also plays a detective in the film.
Right. And even for Dean Cain, this isn't, he's not really stepping out of too much of how he is, being a special. I believe he's stepped into the role of being a reserve police officer, I believe. Right. So, even, doing what he does, you're going to actually kind of see Dean Cain, not really bending too much of how he is to conform to a character. You're going to see Dean Cain, kind of how he is.
AlfonZo, finally, what do you believe is the takeaway from this film? What do you hope viewers walk away with?
Well, I'd like to see a dent made in the culture in terms of how abortion is and what it is. People, it's either selfish or they just don't know. And hopefully, it's like they don't really think about what it actually is. It's like, because they can't, this person can't speak, or because this person can't vote, or it's dependent on the mother to a degree where they just don't see it as a real human being. They may ignore, the rights that are bestowed upon conception. Hopefully this movie will kind of tap into that, and a light will go on and say, wait a minute, we are talking about a life here. And, if murder can play out this where it's like a person's, the mother herself, if they can relate to the mom whose life is in danger, maybe they'll see her as a mom. And so why is she a mom? Because she's carrying a life. And hopefully that will tap into something, with this movie.
I know a lot of people are looking forward to it. AlfonZo Rachel, who plays Detective Stark, and Gosnell, America's biggest serial killer, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
To continue our conversation, we are joined now by Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the Susan B. Anthony List, and Lila Rose, president of Live Action. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is a power panel. First off, it's been 5 years already since abortionist Kermit Gosnell was convicted for 3 counts of murder and 1 count of involuntary manslaughter, bringing it back to his trial in that case. What are things that stood out to you both that you want to highlight for our viewers?
Well, I guess I would first say, and I'd love to hear what you think, Lila, we see the effect of the cover-up of evil and the ripple effects that it has on the rest of civilization. We're seeing it right now in the church at this very moment. But look in this movie, the levels of cover-up of that horrible evil that was going on in that clinic. The governor of Pennsylvania, who knew what was going on, all levels of his health department knew what was going on, and nobody did anything. It just shows what one voice could do and no voices could never uncover.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a warning signal that what happened in Pennsylvania with Kermit Gosnell committing these atrocities against children, most of it was legal. He was killing children in the womb. The part that wasn't legal was when the child survived the attempt on the child's life, and then that abortionist committed infanticide. But the reality is, Gosnell is not alone. There are abortionists like him all across the country who are committing heinous acts against children and who are also willing to kill children that survive abortion attempts. Because unfortunately, throughout our country, in many states, you can commit an abortion on a child that's viable, that can survive outside the womb.
And now the movie about Gosnell's trial is set to be released October 12th. Lila, you said this is a movie that big abortion in Hollywood don't want you to see. What do you mean by that?
Well, this is a movie that would have never been made by those in Hollywood. Most folks right now working in the industry who are, whether they're actors, they're producers, they're writers, many of them are even public advocates or have spoken out on behalf of Planned Parenthood. You have a whole slew of actresses who support Planned Parenthood, filmmakers who support Planned Parenthood. So this crew of filmmakers who made Gosnell are going against the grain completely, and they have had a tough time getting this film even to get it into theaters, which is why we're very excited that it's happening this fall, because this film has been in production for years now, and finally they're going to make it out, to get it out in front of the American public.
And Marjorie, you said that you think young people in particular should see this film. Why is that?
Well, there's no question about that, because they have there is a legacy that we're trying to form now to give to our next generations. But young people now need to be involved in that very thing. I think the timing of this movie that you just alluded to is perfect, because it's right before the midterm elections. The reminder of senators who voted to fund Planned Parenthood should be fresh in all of these Senate battleground states. And speaking to the young people, this is the civil rights movement of their age, and getting involved certainly in marching, definitely in protesting at local Planned Parenthoods, but definitely getting involved in elections. This election is a great and beautiful way to begin your own political life.
Absolutely. And Lila, you hit on this. You have done undercover work in abortion clinics. To be clear, was Gosnell's clinic an outlier in the abortion industry?
It wasn't. I mean, we've documented through live actions in human investigation, 5 different states going undercover into abortion clinics in New Mexico, in New York, here in Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., the abortionist Cesare Santangelo was committing abortions on babies that were old enough to survive outside the womb. And he even told our investigator, who was pregnant with a child that was viable, that would have survived outside the womb, he told her that he would not allow the child to survive that abortion attempt. And if the child did, he would not resuscitate, he would not call 911. That child would end up dying in his facility.
Marjorie, since Gosnell's conviction, has there been any impact on legislation? Has anything changed?
Well, definitely. The fact that we don't have a federal law that is completely defunded Planned Parenthood completely is outrageous. It's outrageous on the heels of this horrible evil that's now being exposed. But I will say a lot has changed. Just a few short years ago, Planned Parenthood was really a Teflon organization. You'd throw darts, arrows, slings, and arrows, try to get the truth to be told, and no one in the public sphere would speak to this. It is a different day now. It's acknowledged as the #1 provider of abortion in the country, facilitating human trafficking, facilitating late, middle, abortion from conception. The good news has come out about who they are and what their real goals are, regardless of what they say about the overall health care of women. So, and that is how movements begin, get momentum, and then succeed.
Lila Rose, Marjorie Dannenfelser, thank you both again for your time.
Thanks, Catherine.
The Senate Judiciary Committee will begin its set of confirmation hearings for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh next week, starting September 4th. It cannot be overstated how pivotal of a moment this is for the pro-life movement. For decades, Justice Anthony Kennedy has been a swing vote on abortion. If Kavanaugh replaces Kennedy on the High Court, it would mean having a justice who believes in the Constitution and the right to life. Supreme Court nominee Kavanaugh could be the deciding vote in a possible future case that could overturn the Roe v. Wade decision. With that, here's this week's call to action. Tell your senators to confirm Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Here's how you can do that. Simply go to prolifeweekly.com. Type in some of your basic information so we can craft the message to be for your specific senators. And then click Submit at the bottom of the screen. Kavanaugh, a devout Catholic, has served on the D.C. Circuit Court for more than a decade. During his time on the bench, he forcefully rejected the ACLU's assertion of a new constitutional right of abortion on demand for illegal immigrant minors in U.S. custody. And in the case Priests for Life versus HHS, Kavanaugh refused to apply the HHS contraceptive mandate to religious entities. Let's put the pressure on the Senate to confirm Brett Kavanaugh to the High Court. Again, the significance here cannot be overstated. Confirming Kavanaugh is a critical step towards possibly overturning the Roe v. Wade decision. Go to prolifeweekly.com to tell your senators to confirm Supreme Court nominee Kavanaugh. Turning now to more news, the U.S. Senate failed last week to pass an amendment that would have blocked Planned Parenthood funding.
Planned Parenthood ends the lives of 320,000 babies each year.
Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky introduced the amendment to the Labor, Health, and Human Services Appropriations Bill. If it had passed last week, it would have redirected taxpayer dollars away from Planned Parenthood and other entities that perform abortions. But the Senate's final vote was 45 to 48. Going now to the global front, as the clerical sex abuse crisis continues to send shockwaves throughout the church, Pope Francis and thousands of Catholics convened in Dublin, Ireland last week for the World Meeting of Families. The major international event is held every 3 years, bringing together families from across the world to celebrate, pray, and reflect upon the central importance of marriage and the family as the cornerstone of our lives, society, and the church. It featured many talks and panels on the subject, and now we're joined by one married couple who spoke on the importance of mothers and fathers. Dr. John and Claire Grabowski are representing the United States at the World Meeting of Families in Ireland. They're authors of the book One Body, a program of marriage preparation and enrichment for the new evangelization. They have over 25 years experience in helping Catholic couples prepare for marriage. And I should give a disclaimer here. I know them personally as they helped my husband and I prepare for marriage earlier this year. John and Claire, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Catherine. It's great to be here with you.
Your talk at the World Meeting of Families was on why mothers and fathers matter in Amoris Laetitia. What were your main points?
So as Pope Francis often tells us, children need both a mother and a father. Each sex has distinctive gifts that they bring to those vocations. Only men can be fathers, only women can be mothers. At the same time, there needs to be a certain amount of flexibility of roles within a family based on individual personalities and culture.
Are motherhood and fatherhood valued in today's culture anymore?
Well, when people start thinking that you can raise children with just one parent versus a mother and a father, or two parents of the same sex instead of a mother and a father, then yes, they are devaluing the vocation of mother and fatherhood.
The legalization of no-fault divorce followed the introduction of the birth control pill in the United States. John, you are a professor of theology at the Catholic University of America. From your point of view, what impact did the sexual revolution have specifically on the family?
Well, oral contraception was kind of the jet fuel of the sexual revolution, but it was also a solvent that dissolved the ties between marriage, sex, and children. It used to be that people would get married, they would sexually consummate their marriage, and that would enable them to receive the gift of a child. What contraception said is you can separate those things. You can have sex without a fear of a child, without the need to get married. And with assisted reproductive technologies, now you don't need to be married or to have sex in order to have children. That's been a catastrophe for our families. I think the crisis that we're seeing in the church right now of the sexual abuse scandal is itself the fruit of a deeper crisis of the family produced by the sexual revolution.
I mentioned that you two have spent over 25 years in marriage preparation, and you've written a book about marriage preparation, One Body. How do you think parishes can and should better equip Catholic couples preparing for marriage so that they do fully understand the Church's teaching on life? And for Catholics watching who don't think they're getting that kind of preparation from their parish, what kind of tools do you recommend for them?
Well, I think, to borrow a line from St. John Paul II, who's quoting Jesus in the Gospel, we need to put out into the deep. We need a deeper immersion in Scripture, a deeper immersion in the vision that the Church gives us of why marriage, love, and life belong together. And that's not because the Church wants to impose a burden on us. It's because the Church wants us to experience a deeper life and the fullness of what our faith offers. Claire might want to add to that.
Yes, Claire, what do you think?
Well, I think that what's clear is that we need to do more than what we're doing now to help couples prepare for marriage and to continue to grow during their marriage. Our book would be a wonderful tool to use, or there are many other tools out there. But it's just clear that we have to do more than what we've been doing. We can see that marriage needs the support of other couples, and we need to help them.
And finally, for young people who are watching who maybe are afraid to say yes to marriage and are afraid to say yes to life within marriage, what would you want to tell them?
Well, it's interesting because I met a young couple when we were on a bus tour here in Ireland last week, and I asked them if they were married, and their first response was, no, we've been together for 5 years, but it's too expensive. We can't afford marriage. And I just looked at them and I said, but you're missing out. You're missing out on the blessings of marriage, the gift of children, and the grace of the sacrament. There's so much out there for couples if they just realize that if they get married, the Lord wants to bless them abundantly. And I would just tell them, don't sell yourself short. Take advantage of what God has planned for you. It's a wonderful gift.
That is a beautiful message. Thank you both, John and Claire Grabowski, for your work, for your ministry, and for spending time with us today.
Thanks so much, Catherine.
Yes, thank you, Catherine.
When we come back,
think twice about before you want to get rid of your child. Like, it's people out here that's willing to help you.
one woman tells us how a pro-life group helped her walk out of an abortion clinic and say yes to life. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. For this week's Speak Out segment, we have found what is possibly the most bizarre pairing this summer. It involves support for abortion and ice cream. NARAL Pro-Choice Oregon, a chapter of a pro-abortion group, has partnered with the What's the Scoop ice cream shop to create, get this, a Rocky Roe v. Wade ice cream flavor. Up until this past weekend, the flavor was being sold for $9.50 a pint. One promotional tweet about the ice cream says, "Order yours now and help defend reproductive freedom. #SaveRoe." Well, I have officially lost my appetite. This flavor is obviously meant to coincide with the Senate confirmation hearings for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and the possibility he could be the deciding vote in a possible future case to overturn Roe v. Wade, the devastating Supreme Court decision responsible for 60 million abortions in the U.S. so far. The Supreme Court decision that this ice cream flavor is named for. Not only is it actually disgusting to have an abortion-themed flavor, but this reveals the length abortion advocates will go to spread their propaganda. Ice cream shops are meant to be joyful places where children and families can gather. But at Oregon's What's the Scoop, children were bombarded with abortion messaging when trying to decide if they should get sprinkles on their chocolate cone or not. Why twist something that's innocent and joyful to promote a heinous agenda? NARAL and abortion advocates need to consider how many millions of children will never be able to enjoy Rocky Road ice cream precisely because of Roe v. Wade. Remember, there is always something you can do to counter this kind of abortion propaganda. You can follow this week's call to action. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com and tell your senators to confirm Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. How much of yourself are you willing to give in order to save unborn lives from abortion? How much of your time, your energy? How about your money? For this week's Pro-Life Focus, hear how one group is helping save babies and families from abortion.
With a grin as wide as his face, it's chilling to think baby Hayden's life was close to being cut short.
I actually thank God that I kept him, because it was like I could be stressed out about something. I look at him and he's a happy baby. So it's just like now I thank God for me meeting Miss Linda.
I believe in all my heart that this baby is alive because of Save Unborn Life and the $3,000.
Miss Linda, or Linda Marshall, is a pro-life Christian woman who last October woke up and felt called to go to a local Maryland abortion clinic. It was there she met Jasmine Stansel and baby Hayden's father.
We decided to get an abortion because it was like, I already have 2 other kids. We have a car, bills, stuff like that. So I'm like, it's too much. So then Miss Linda changed our mind.
Miss Linda shared the truth about abortion and the value of their unborn child's life.
I'm thinking like, yes, you never know what this baby life could be worth. This baby could be anything when he gets older, he or she gets older. So she was like, well, what if I tell you I can give you $3,000 if you keep your baby? So I'm like, well, that would actually be a big help, because that was the main priority, financial reasons.
She had these 2 children and she was looking at the financial aspect of it. And I told her about Save Unborn Life. And I said, well, there's Save Unborn Life organization, and they will give you $3,000 on the birth of your baby. And I think they were like, are you sure about this? Is this really going to happen?
It really was. A few months later, in March of 2018, Hayden was born, and the group Save Unborn Life sent Jasmine a $3,000 check. Save Unborn Life is a nonprofit that gives abortion-minded women money so they can bring their babies to term. The founder, a Catholic and retired nurse, Laura Marriott, tells us about the group's beginnings.
I worked as a nurse practitioner in a pregnancy center, and the director had just finished an ultrasound of a young lady, and she just looked at her and said, I just can't afford this baby, after seeing that perfect baby on ultrasound. And the director just came out and was so saddened because it was about money. And she was telling her, I can't afford this baby. And I said, well, has anybody ever thought of just paying them a certain amount of money?
Marriott typically works with pro-life pregnancy centers to get referrals for women who feel like they have no choice but to get an abortion because of financial reasons.
They call us, and then we meet them and sign a contract that basically says, I will continue this pregnancy and give this baby birth. I will take care of myself. And when the baby's born, then they are awarded the $3,000.
At least 103 babies have been saved so far. Because when it comes to welcoming new life, money matters. According to the Guttmacher Institute, Planned Parenthood's own research arm, 75% of U.S. women who get abortions are poor or low income, and 59% already have a child.
Oftentimes, many of these women are in financial poverty. They really don't even know how they're going to pay their bills.
Which is why Save Unborn Life hopes pro-lifers will take their beliefs to the bank.
For pro-life Americans, if it's about money, I really think, enough of us can step up and say, well, we'll help you out. We'll offer you hope. You don't have the regrets of ending this baby's life, because these girls are telling us they don't want an abortion, but it's money.
As someone who's been on the inside of the abortion clinic and got out, Jasmine Stansel wants all mothers to know their baby's life is priceless.
Think twice about before you want to get rid of your child. Like, it's people out here that's willing to help you. It's people, I just feel like no child should be aborted because financial reasons. It could be anything. Like, I didn't expect to get a second job when I did, so it just be like, I feel like abortion shouldn't be in at all.
If you want to find out more about the group Save Unborn Life, simply go to saveunbornlife.org. That'll do it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, but I'd love to hear from you before next week. Email me at prolifeweekly@ewtn.com or like my public page on Facebook so we can keep this pro-life conversation going. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.